There was many things I liked about it, but many things I also didn't like, and some things that just absolutely aggravated me. But we're gonna save that for its own video. I have a lot, and I mean a lot to say on this game. So I don't think a single like end of credits thing like this will do that justice. So for that reason, we're gonna wait on that. 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 Hello spectators and welcome to the show. It is your host, MosaicArts, here, finally, about time at last, here with the long-awaited Whisper of Soul review. As you know months ago, from when I'm finally making this, I finished the Whisper of Soul Let's Play series. After finishing the game, seeing everything that it had to offer, analyzing all the aspects of it, its story, its gameplay, its level design, its balancing, its characters, and what have you, I was able to finally gather my full thoughts on how I felt about this. Overall, when I look at the full picture, with how huge the game is, I had quite a bit to say on it. There was things I liked about it, things I didn't like about it, and things that absolutely drove me up a wall. As such, throughout this video, I'm going to go over multiple different aspects of this game, one by one. I'll switch between the things I thought were good and the things I thought were bad. That way, I can mix it up. And then, once I give all the positive sections that I think of the attention that they should have, and then also all the bad things as well, I'll give some of my other thoughts I couldn't fit into any other section. And once I do that, that'll be my closing thoughts. So, with this being said, let's get started. Why don't we? So, opening things up right off the bat, when it came to how I felt in regards to this game's story, well, I liked it. That's the most I can really say about it. Overall, I felt like it was pretty solid. It kept things engaging and interesting, and it felt like with every new ending that happened, there was something new to unpack with each character, some new fragment of information, some new thing we found out happened between the cast that kind of developed the backstory more, or something that just added more in many different ways to the background lore that we didn't know anything about. And it felt really cool and rewarding to piece together the plot and see how things all came together by the end of it. Once I was getting all the fragments of it throughout the game. Now that's just how I felt about, you know, the background information and things on the game. There's other aspects in regards to the story to talk about. In regards to how I felt about the individual endings, well, we can save that for later. I have a good bit to say on it. But, as I mentioned, even though what I had to say on the story was mostly good, it did have some flaws. At least in my opinion, there were some problems that I had. And the main one that I honestly had personally was how Tailstorm was handled, mainly in the best end. Not really the other endings, but the best end. The Orange Hedgehog, as well as the Cream Panda. But we'll get to that later. And there was also a couple of awkward moments I found in the story too. For example, after the Metal Sonic, the group meets back up with Amy after she just bashed Metal Sonic's big dumb stupid tin head in. Cream noticed that Sally wasn't with Tails Doll anymore and asked, "Hey, where's Tails Doll?" And then Sally is just like, "We got separated and I think it got destroyed." It got destroyed, and then Robotnik's all like, Don't worry about that, it's just a robot. It was just a robot, and Cream's just like, that's a robot! But then quickly drops it out of nowhere.
Drop it!
Nothing's done with it. At all. I didn't realize something like that happened. Wouldn't somebody bring it up a little bit more? They wouldn't just say like, "Oh, you're wrong about that. Just a robot," and then just immediately drop it? No, you wouldn't do that. That doesn't make any sense. It also kind of reminds me what happened in Spirits of Hell Realm, where Tails actually did similar to Tails in Robotnik Duel ending. When, you know, Robotnik literally tells Tails that Knuckles is dead, and Tails just like,
I don't believe this!
And then just immediately drops it. Like, what? What the? Yeah, I don't know why he did that. No clue. No idea. So to reiterate, like I said regarding the story, I think overall it did a pretty good job. But it did have a couple problems I had with it that I can talk a bit more about later. But, speaking of later, next I want to talk about something that I have opinions on. Next up, we're going to talk about something that, well, let's just show it now. When it comes to the other essential aspect of this game, the gameplay, well, it leaves a decent bit to be desired. When it came to how the game went about introducing new gimmicks to the playstyles, it overall did a pretty good job. Usually when it came to teaching you how to play. When it introduced you how to play with the different controls and how to play each style, it did a good job at teaching it to you. However, it doesn't mean how it taught you how to play. The gameplay was good in and of itself. I'll go over this in a sec. But before we talk about that, let's talk about how I felt about the gameplay styles themselves. First off, Amy. There's nothing I would really change about Amy's gameplay style. I feel like if it's broken, don't fix it.
We are going to pretend we didn't hear that.
When it came to Cream's gameplay style, it definitely had some interesting ideas in it, and how it would revolve around fast-speeding movement, but again the problem comes in the execution of it, that due to the game's screen crunch, combined with the quick maneuvers it expected you to do, you usually didn't have enough time to react to what was in front of you, or know exactly what you're supposed to do. Maybe if this game had something like the camera from Sonic CD, which would pan ahead whenever you ran, or a larger screen resolution, or even both, this game would have worked decently better in this regard than it does due to it. Though admittedly, Sonic games in general do kind of struggle with balancing speed with fairly designed gameplay, though both are completely possible to do. In regards to when it comes to the titular character's gameplay, I feel like it spread itself a bit too thin by giving Sally just a bit too many abilities, and as a result, a couple of them barely saw any use, or some of them could have been combined or just removed. For example, both the Fire and Rock ability gave you the ability to shoot a projectile that went in a straight line, and as a result, one option would have been making the fireball bigger if the intent was making the size of the projectile and removing the rock, or just not having the rock at all. What? Were you expecting a Dwayne The Rock Johnson joke? Come on, I'm not that unoriginal. Even if the intent of this was to make having the ability to boost in the air a trade-off for having smaller projectiles, this is a flawed philosophy given the game's design. Why is this? Well, there's next to no enemies that you encounter during the game. The only enemies you really ever use as a result are Exler during the Limp City segment, and Exicon during as not only does Sally never have an encounter with Exabark in any of her endings, we never really fight any other enemies as Sally, other than Eggman, which nothing in his fight, at least from what I can tell anyway, works with the way the fire and rock abilities work, and so is flawed in that regard too. And as another example, the boosting ability also didn't really work as an ability that you needed to switch to use it, as not only was it only ever really used in spots designed around using it, but it was also something you didn't really need for the most part other than some spots here and there. And as such, this left the only really useful ability Sally had being the wind and electric abilities. With the former, you could shoot projectiles, again, kind of like the fire and rock count, and fall slowly, the latter of which was useful especially. In the latter, you could do really high jumps, ride the electrical currents, make electrical barrier, hard electrical stuff. I did, however, find these abilities fun to use, even if they were the only. In terms of what I personally would have done to make Sally's game focus, what I would have done is have focused Sally's game just 3 elements instead of 5. In terms of what I would have chosen, I would have went with the fire, wind, and electric. I would have made the boosting ability a fire ability, as not only does it fit as a fire ability since fire spreads quick, but this is a thing too. And I honestly would have just dropped the rock ability completely, as both the fire and wind powers already allowed for the projectile. On top of this, there isn't really any strength that it has over them along with it, as I went over, it's not like you're going to be hitting enemies with this, other than 1 or 2 bosses, because of the fact that there's no enemies. When it came to Tails' gameplay style, even though I enjoyed it, I feel like it tried a bit too hard to separate itself from Tails' gameplay style, as the only thing it really did was give him the ability to drop bombs and call it a day. And though there's nothing wrong with the gameplay style, I feel like the main issue is that it just made the styles a little bit too similar to each other. I guess one idea could have been giving Tails like his electro cannon, even though if it would have been similar to Sally having electro cannon, they probably would have functioned different enough despite that. Or another idea, maybe his tail whipping ability or something. Just a thought. Though you could argue that there are only similarities that they both fly. So yeah. In the case of Knuckles' gameplay style, there's nothing to really say since they didn't really offer the one in round 1. And I was fine with this as Knuckles' gameplay was never broken, so it didn't really need much reason to fix it. And now finally we have a Robotnik's game. Man, what did they do to you? If this doesn't make it obvious, yeah, I wasn't really a fan of Robotnik's new gameplay style. I feel like what they should have done is taken the gameplay style Robotnik had in round 1 and improved it and fixed it a bit to make it easier to play. And the main reason I really don't like this new gameplay style Robotnik is that because of how limited the control Robotnik is compared to pretty much every other character. All you can really do is fly around with him, shoot a laser, and use the occasional shield here and there. It didn't really leave a lot of options for innovation, but to a lot of his levels weren't very simple, despite the fact that more could have been done with him. Every level with him was basically just this: fly around, usually in an enclosed or a super hasty manner, making it not that fun when you have to do it all the time. Shoot this object, shoot that object, run from this guy, run from that guy, shoot that extremely agile airborne animal out of the air, run from this other guy, dodge this thing slow and steady.
After all, that wins the race.
Do you see the issue? The problem is that Robotnik's gameplay was really redundant. The thing that sucks is that it clearly didn't need to be this way, as for one thing, this is Robotnik we're talking. Think about all the many different contraptions you're using to try to defeat Sonic and his friends all the time. There's so many things that they could have done with it. But even in the game itself, there's multiple different things that happen where they could have used this to be... For example, the crazy thing is Robotnik's jetpack actually gets destroyed. And this could have been something, but no, they have this on the spotlight again. And the best ending, instead have Robotnik use bombs in a strategic way, would prove also that just because he was airborne, it doesn't mean you have to have the same ball at the time. Like the projectiles, like I just mentioned, could have been switched around too. It could have made Robotnik's lasers unchargeable. It could have given him extra tools on more levels. There could have been some levels something to do with his gameplay. He could have had more levels. The options are probably the broadest out of every character in the lot. And in the end, it ended up being pretty much Cookie Cutter and basic out of all of them. Which is unfortunate. But it happened. In regards to how I felt about X's style, the way his segment is designed is awesome. His gameplay, because it's such a small segment where he only plays him with one enemy and nowhere else, but I do like what we got with him. In regards to the level design, I don't know if I would really say it was much better. There was really challenging obstacles in a lot of spots, which isn't bad on its own, but with a lot of them, mainly creepy. Not really much so the others. They were just a little bit overbearing in general, in multiple ways. And another problem they also had is just that a lot of them just felt really bare. Most of them were mainly just platforms, with nothing else really going on in between. Like, when I try to think of an example of a level that comes to mind that had enemies in it, I'm pretty sure almost no level did, other than Sally's Freedom Assault, if you would even count that. And in regards to other things about the level design, we also have the boss fight. Yeah, we'll talk about those later. Hey, this level at the very least has good music, but even if there isn't really much to see in the level in itself. Speaking of good music, when it came to the musical choices of this game, just about every single musical choice that was made fit with the environments or respective situations. Even if they didn't, they were just bops in general. As some examples, let me play some now. yeah, in general, there's no song that was really put in this game that comes to mind anyway that I feel was poorly chosen, other than a couple themes here and there that I might have changed. There's, for example, the Ultimate X-Hunt fight. Speaking of the Ultimate X-Hunt fight, though, let's talk about, yeah, something else. So, do you guys really want to know why the difficulty is so bad? Well, do you? Do you? Well, short answer... No! Weird! Oh my...
Spin dash! Dead! I gotta get out of here! Wait a minute, I can just fart on her.
Long answer. The thing that made the difficulty scaling in this game so bad is that in most cases, like I had previously discussed in the gameplay section, with how the game basically like introduced the different gameplay styles of each of the characters to you, is that usually you wouldn't have enough of a chance to get accustomed to the character's playstyle for the sudden spikes in difficulty. If I had to most accurately describe what I feel like the difficulty scaling in this game is, it would be something like this. And to regards to why you normally wouldn't have enough time to get accustomed to the gameplay style, it's because of the fact that, in many cases, the game never chose just one gameplay style to stick with. For example, in Cream's level, go from playing the normal gameplay where you're just suddenly playing the flashlight gameplay on her main round. The same happens with Amy's main round. You go from playing her normal gameplay to suddenly playing a ship flying segment on her solo. What does that have to do with Amy's gameplay? It doesn't really have anything to do with it. Literally nothing at all. As another example, the Sally and Cream duo survival. You go from a normal gameplay of Sally to suddenly going to the super slow moving train segment. As to why this is such a problem, it's because generally you introduce a player a new gameplay style. You start with something safe and easy to get them used to the style, and then introduce new challenges which gradually rise in difficulty. So in that way, to get used to the style of the gameplay, so it prevents difficulty spikes, unfairly large challenge, and in turn a lot less player rate. I would say this is one of the reasons why generally, when games are made, it's common for them to have a focus on their gameplay style. As some examples, let me go over a few. The classic Sonic games, the gameplay style and the philosophy of their gameplay seem to be built around momentum, I would say. Basically, going fast, keeping momentum, going quick, and like things like that. You do things like this in the game that innovate on it, like rolling down hills, bouncing off the springs, finding power-ups that speed you up, and in many ways the gameplay is revolved around beating levels as quick as you can, or slowing down to explore them, if that's what you're trying to do instead. In the case of Super Metroid, The gameplay is mainly revolved around, well, exploration and using the tools that the game gives you to overcome the obstacles it throws at you. It's pretty common in fact that the game makes it where for you to progress, you have to look around for certain items to continue on in the game. In other words, the focus is on the exploration and doing the kind of things with your energy or arm cannon or whatever cannon. You know, whatever you feel like calling it. No idea what you would call it. Punch Out. Pretty simple. It's revolved around punching out the other boxes with your fancy punches and dodging punches and stuff. And that's pretty much what you do the entire game. While Mario 2, its gameplay focus is all around jumping and throwing things. Basically, busting like a boss or something, whatever that one person, I don't know. Who knows? No idea. And in regards to the reason that each of these games commonly have a one core foundation they build upon throughout the entirety of their game, is that not only is it a lot easier for you to build off of one main form of gameplay, and does it also draw out your creativity since you're trying to pick this one central gameplay philosophy to work with, but commonly when people play a game, they're looking for something specific to play, whether it's platforming, a first-person shooter, a simulator game, or of course, horror. If you make a game that tries to be everything at the same time, in most cases, unless you make the deviating gameplay formats their own thing random apart, or you make the deviations from the normal gameplay some kind of variation on the normal gameplay. For example, the treasure hunting segment and Knuckles' free assault, which we'll talk more about that ending later. While some people will be fine with this, there will also be many who are put off by sudden changes in the gameplay. In turn, it may lower their enjoyment of the game. As such, the reason it's better to pick one core foundation to base your game around is that if you're specifically trying to deliver to a specific audience, you have a better chance of getting what they're looking for. And again, pleasing multiple audiences isn't impossible, but it's easier to do when you have a gameplay that you're focusing on. And as I pointed out, with the sudden switches in gameplay, like as already stated, Cream going from her normal gameplay to the flashlight segment, Amy going from her normal gameplay to the flying spaceships, or her flying segment, this is exactly what the game doesn't do. It only briefly introduces the main gameplay styles of each character before either throwing them right into the deep end, or just not having a focus on what it's trying to achieve. 1 second you're collecting colorful crowns in a bright, colorful amusement park, and another you're suddenly dragging your deactivated robot friend across the ground, trying to hide from a sadistic blue ghost and some blue hedgehog porcupine wolf thing. I don't know what to call it. No idea. Which overall makes for an experience in which the end goal was trying to achieve really unclear. Speaking of endings though, when it came to the endings in this game, there was a lot of them. There was quite a bit to talk about. If you need a reference at just how many endings this game has, it has 21 different endings. Yeah, there's an obvious joke there, but I forgot. Oh, and I just remembered, there was 2 secret endings too. Can't forget those secret endings now. But the way I'll be talking about each ending is, I'll be ranking them, what I feel like was the worst one, what was the best one, and I'll go over the story, gameplay, and difficulty scaling of each of them, and then say what I really thought about each of them. Based on the way I'll be handling this section, I'm going to rank each of the endings worst to best, and after I reveal the ranking of each one, I'll talk about its story a bit, I'll talk about its gameplay a bit, and I'll talk about its difficulty scaling a bit, and that's the reason why I played where I did. You got it? Let's begin. At 21st place, we have the Cream Sally duo Survival. Not only was the ending copy and pasted the Cream solo ending, but in many ways the ending itself was just really underwhelming. But the only interesting thing in the choice of Sally.Exe for lore details, which most endings give anyway, the gameplay was extremely tedious, and on top of this, one of the characters was killed super early on in the events of it anyway. Though, to be honest, that didn't bother me that much. I know a number of people didn't like it. At number 20, we have the Cream and Robotnik duel. While this ending is still pretty weak of an ending overall, when I compare it to the Cream Sally duel, it's more unique gameplay-wise. Doesn't exactly mean it's good though. And it was easier to get a joke out of how abrupt the ending was, and the death fake is a bit more interesting to allow them to broken down fight. Plus, like we just said, one of the two characters for early on. At number 19, we have the Amy Tails duel ending. There's only 2 words I have for this ending. Take it away, Cast. There's really not much else to say on it though, especially given there was just no gameplay to really discuss in it. At number 18, we have the Sally solo. Honestly, nothing super eventful happened in the story of it. There was some things where Sally was looking for everybody else. They try to kill Sally. Sally's like, I gotta climb the tower and do something or whatever. Exe can be all like, hee, I'm gonna kill you. And then Sally kicks Execon's A. She gets to the top, about to grab the emerald. Exe was all like, my emerald. Alice was like, my emerald. Yeah, nothing of that. In regards to difficulty scaling, it was okay, but the Execon fight could have definitely been designed better. Execon also was honestly just a bit too hard in the difficulty. At number 17, we have the Amy solo. Like the Sally solo, nothing really super eventful. Dream City was just kind of there. The Exabark and Execon fight was really badly designed, and for that reason, the ending just goes from being doable to just unreasonably difficult. At number 16, we have the Amy Sally duel. The dynamic of the ending made sense given the two's past, but not too much notable happened, though it was a little sad. The gameplay was pretty fine, I suppose. The color blocks were interesting, but the Amy way was really poorly designed, and both ways overall were just a bit too difficult. At number 15, we have the Amy Queen duo survival. In general, it was a pretty weak ending. Not much happened in it. The gameplay was just kinda there. Prison Tower was an interesting concept. The Cream way was way too easy. And I feel the difficulty in designing was scaled pretty fine. At number 14, we have the Secret Worst ending. The most I can say about it is that it's just a really dark ending that had some interesting ideas, but not really much else to offer because it was only a cutscene and nothing else really. At number 13, we have the Cream Tails duel. Not much happened, but it was really dark at the end. But the difficulty? Yeah, no. Way too difficult. Way too difficult has already been. At number 12, we have the Sally Tails duel ending. Again, not much story. On Tails' end, it was kinda tough. Sally was easier, still vague and unclear. It was kinda difficult on one end, really easy on one end of it. Both had pretty easily exploitable patterns. Coming in at number 11, we have the Tails solo. It was kinda dark, but not much notable. It was kinda there in regards to like its gameplay, and the difficulty was pretty fine, and not much really happened. Cream Knuckles duel was there until it wasn't. That bit at the end was really interesting, and I hope we see more of the ZX round 3 or the DLC. They look really interesting, so I think that'll be cool. The Sally Cream Tails trio survival is what I would put next. And in regards to the gameplay, I thought the quick time event was really cool. The story, again, was just not really anything super interesting to write home about, and the difficulty was pretty fine. Overall, pretty nice ending. The worst ending was really difficult. The story, I feel like, kinda made up for it. And it was cool to play as Axelor in the ending. So in general, I think it deserves it. The Robotic solo had pretty neat story, even if not much super specific to say about it. The difficulty scaling was actually fine because of the fact that you didn't have too many tough parts to do. And the gameplay, I think, was fine enough on its own. Overall, I liked it. The Cream solo was also pretty good, to be honest, in regards to the story. The difficulty scaling was a little bit off, but I think the gameplay was mostly fine. You have the right idea, you just need the X better. The Amy Knuckles duo was also pretty fun. The difficulty scaling was pretty fine, the story was pretty good, I liked it, and the gameplay was also pretty neat. In general, really good job. Same with the Lost ending. Really good story, actually a lot better gameplay, and a difficulty scaling, while it was just a little bit off, that's better than what we usually see. At number 3, we have the Crazed Amy route. In regards to which one I prefer over the other, I would say at number 3, I put the on purpose outcome, and at number 2, I put the on accident. I just feel like story-wise, the accident outcome regarding the story is better, while on the other hand, the gameplay is the same for both of the outcomes otherwise, so that's not really relevant to the ranking. I feel like the gameplay was done well enough, while the story was just so good to where I just couldn't really rank it too much lower than that. So, I put the accident ending at number 2, and the on purpose ending at number 3 for that reason. And finally at number 1, we have the Knuckles. The gameplay was pretty good. Like the Hydro City part, I liked quite a bit because like it was a really cool throwback. I really liked the story. The difficulty scaling could have been better, but to be honest, I would argue most of the endings had a difficulty scaling issue. And like I said, I just really liked the story that was done. So as it stands currently, the Knuckles solo is actually my favorite ending. And some of you might be surprised at that, but yeah. So, now that I've finished this list, you might notice that it seems like I missed an ending. And yeah, that wasn't an accident. I left it out as there's so much to say on it that, well, I couldn't keep it brief. With that being said, let's talk about it now. When it came to the best ending, and discussing the best ending, I felt, given the scope that this ending has specifically, it's only appropriate that we discuss the best ending within its own section, since, well, we have a lot to say on it. First off, starting with the story goes something like this. We should leave off right after Cream finds out that Exicon literally oofed Cheese big time, literally told him to go oof, you know how you are, you know the whole bit. And so we leave off right where X-Spark is chasing after Cream and Tails doll. Suddenly Amy comes in all like, to the rescue! And here to expose a, I don't know, Exabark. Anyway, you go through all the fight time, and Amy succeeds in basically rescuing Cream. And then Sally shows up, and then after Amy, Cream, and then later on Sally and Tails all meet with each other. They talk for a bit, and in general, I would say it was. And then, when Cream tells everybody that Explorers will be attacking the city in about 3 hours, apparently an entire hour ago. Dang, time flies when you're in a panic, doesn't it? Am I right, or am I right? Tell me I'm right. Right? And so, they make their way to the sewer. Sally kicks down the door like a badass. And then, when they're in the sewer, Sally's like, wait a minute. I think there's a Chaos Emerald down here. Or no, not Sally, Tails doll realizes. And so they go down to where they think the emerald is, only to find who they believe is the Orange Hedgehog, only for him to just suddenly die. Exler comes in and takes the emerald, and then he also is all like, ha ha ha, I'm here to take Tails doll's emerald too. And so he leaves, and then they're just like, frick, Tails doll doesn't have the emerald now. but they don't have time to think about that, as it's time to go to the Freedom City because of what's about to happen. Main tower, boom, out of nowhere, and then Tails, Knuckles, and Robotnik, or Pingus, or whatever we want to call him, they talk for a bit. They realize, oh my gosh, there's about to be a war. Allie meets with Alice. They talk for a bit. Alice hints at some things about just let him have the Master Emerald and people won't have to die. Sally, instead of being all like, maybe we should consider giving him the Emerald, just like, no, we gotta have our war. Because we won't have a finale unless we don't have our war. You don't get it? You get it, right? Do you? Do you?
Bruh.
And then so, they talk a bunch about how the war is imminent, a bunch of arguing happens, a bunch of parents having a bunch of super deep happens, etc, etc. And so, we then get to the war scenes and what this big, dramatic, cinematic happens. But then the group gets separated because Excellent was blowing everybody to flip off with this Super Saiyan black quills and things like that. Yep, that is exactly what he's doing. And so, it's time for the freedom of the Saltines. And so, throughout this, Sally defends the generators, Knuckles looks for the pieces of Sapphire shards, Robotnik runs away like an absolute Tails has to stop the fireball from burning all of them alive.
Oh no!
Amy fights a foe that isn't even there. And then the group meets up and then they find out, wait a minute, Tailsall's gone, as I've already talked about. So, they go down this dark hallway where they're all like, dude, I can't see anything. It's so dark in here. And it's also cold. He starts saying like, oh, it's a good thing Exler's a weakling. That's what he is, with little Exicum's just like, he's weak while we're on night. So they teleport in, and then they're all like, okay guys, it's time to do the fusion dance and then destroy all of them. And then he grabs all of them, and then it's just like, oh no, if Cream gonna make a success, or I'm just gonna say more to Cream. You know, Cream gets absolutely inner demonized or something like that, or whatever. Who knows what's happening to them? I have no idea what the heck's happening to them. But Cream is all like, no, flip you, oof you, I'm Cream, I have plot armor, breaks out of the nightmare, beats the flip out of the three of them and all of her friends, frees all of them from the spell. They get to the Master Emerald. Oh no, too late, because Exler's taken the Emerald. They're all like, guys, let's do the ritual dance and see if it does anything. They all get teleported to a different dimension, and they all go to the red dimension, or should I say, the red dimension. You like what I said? You see what I did there? Ha ha ha. And then finally, to get to the final Exler interaction, where Exler's all like, did you like my diary? I wrote Dear Diary all over it. That's how you know it was a diary, not a journal. Because, oof, journals are lame. Diaries are where it's at. If it wasn't a diary, nobody would care about it. And so, they beat Exler, and then Sally and Exler talk more, and then you find out more lore stuff, whatever, to pick whatever the heck you choose. Go back to the mainland, or main world. That's what I meant to say. It's totally what I meant to say. I didn't just mess that up. Sally's slowly getting up. You see Sonic flying on the floor unconscious. You see Exler standing over his body. Credits roll. And that is basically the story of the best ending in super, super vague summary. So in regards to what I felt about how each part of the story was handled, let's break this down slowly. It was cool in the meetup between Amy, Cream, Sally, and Tailsall. See some callbacks to the memory fragments, as well as some the four interact with each other in different ways and eventually work out what needed to be done. As up to this point, we really never saw the four interact with each other at all. So finally getting to see them interact in the best ending was a pretty neat thing. When it comes to the sewer segment, there's not a lot to say on it. However, I was really not a fan of how the orange hedgehog twist was handled. It felt like, because of the fact that you always have this the guy over and over throughout almost every ending you played as Sally, that he was being built up as an individual character. Only for there to be a reveal, it was just Exler the entire time. It was a huge disappointment. And for those of you about to tell me, oh, but I feel like the red eyes hinted it. Brah. Are you serious? No, really. Are you serious? Think about what you just said. Just because his eyes were red, that means obviously he was the same character. This character must be the same as this character because they both have the same eye color. Get a better argument, is what I'm saying. When it comes to the meeting between the main six and the main tower, seeing all the main characters in Tales Law at the same place at the same time was also a pretty awesome moment, as it's also something that hasn't happened up until now. And this is pretty much the only ending, other than the Crazy Amy rounds, we also see all three of the round 1 characters live at once. That was pretty cool. Sally and Alice's interaction with each was pretty cool. Though, I don't have too much else to comment on other than it was pretty cool they had the continuation level music playing in the background. In general, pretty cool scene. When it came to all the War's Intimate stuff, it was very interesting hearing them go on about their plans for how they were going to do battle, lore tidbits like that Knuckles fought War before, and setting up things that would happen later on the like. However, let me just say, the Sally-Amy thing felt kind of forced in, to be honest, because I really don't know what it was in the conversation that had that rose the tension between them. See what I did there? Okay, yeah, I know. That wasn't that fun. Anybody could have made that joke fun. And as well as hearing other interesting story bits, like Cream's talk with Tails Doll about her father, along with things that possibly suggest Lara and Phil might have been in the war. Especially given, you know, what Exler said in that one ending. But who knows? The war scene was pretty cool because it was a cinematic that set up the gameplay to come. Though I don't have too much else to comment on in it other than that aspect. Freedom Assault, most of the things we saw take place in it was typical war stuff that you would normally expect, but it has some interesting highlights. Like in Sally's case, the game war scene was pretty elaborate and a pretty neat surprise to discover, because I didn't think there was going to be a scene as elaborate as it was. Though, I don't have too many other things to comment on. The giant fireball of Doom was also a pretty fun element, not much to say there. Things got pretty interesting with Robonic and Amy after they got separated, so we see X-Fi return, as well as seeing stuff going on with Amy, though in Tails' case, we didn't really have much to comment. When the Metal Song fight started, it was cool to see the illusion thing happen, but in regards to what was going on in the story, the whole thing where Amy and Sally were apparently characters weren't really talking, it was something that the story really didn't communicate well, and I was pretty confused on like why characters would act play one foot and then just suddenly change how they acted. Most namely, Robonic being all like so against, you know, us staying here and then suddenly saying, I agree with that. In which it was just super unclear what the reason was, and it wasn't until Danhart gave us the outside answer outside the video that we got a real answer to it. Wait a minute. I could have sworn this is where the Well, since All Mine decided it'd be funny to steal this segment of the video and move it somewhere else, let's just talk about how I felt about the Red Dimension. Or should I say, the Red Dimension. With me saying this, you pretty much get what I'm going to say about this part. It is here where a massive info dump is put on the player, and even though there were a handful of bits that talked about, it dragged on for so long where it's hard to recall a lot of the info you're given, or even maybe 2 or 3 about how high his class worked, extra finding Sonic, and then a couple of other things. When it comes to the final interactions that Exler has with the main crew, it's interesting to hear how the cast isn't physically in the said dimension, but there wasn't really too much else to comment on it. And the questions you could ask for extra lore for the most part had pretty interesting answers, but my main problem with them is that to hear all of them, you either had to beat the final boss like 9 times to hear them all, or you had to just watch them on YouTube. And well, really, what's the fun in that? And finally, when it comes to the gameplay and the difficulty scaling of this ending, let's go over this somewhat quick. In Sally's case, it was really difficult. It was even a tad bit unfair in that you couldn't clearly hit off-screen enemies. However, the gimmick was actually properly introduced and well scaled, but that's probably because it used one of the already long-established gameplay styles, which made it easier to do so. In the case of Knuckles' segment, I was personally not really a fan of the gameplay it went for. However, it didn't really do anything wrong in achieving the said gameplay that it wanted to do. I just wasn't a fan of it. And it was still close enough to being in the realm of Knuckles' gameplay, where it worked perfectly fine. Robotnik's gameplay was honestly one of those difficulty segments I've discussed previously. This segment of the ending is much more difficult than any part of the ending that you play before or after this, not counting the bosses. The tail segment, though, I don't have too much to complain about, but the speed at which you have to do everything is just a little bit unforgiving. In the case of the Metal Sonic fight, pretty much every complaint I had about the Tailsdoll fight also applies to this one. Wonky movement due to the fast scrolling ground? Check. A billion projectiles too many? Check. Lasers that absolutely mess you up to get shot all the time? Check. He takes a billion hits? Check. Metal copy of a member of Team Sonic? Check. So yeah, I had quite a lot to complain about. But since I've been putting it off for a bit, since I put it off earlier, more accurately, let's talk about Ultimate.exe. Oh boy, Ultimate.exe. This fight, very well, this fight might be a perfect manifestation of everything wrong with this entire game, to be honest. The large size of Exicon and the fact that it's a fusion of 3 EXEs is reflective of how this game tried to cram a billion different gameplay styles into one game, making a giant huge abomination. No offense to Danaher, but that's why I kind of feel like the game ended up being in a lot of ways, by not having a concise focus and trying to be everything and ending up being nothing. Also, the large size kind of fitting with just how many endings you had, though that's not really a complaint in my opinion. It's just that it had a lot of endings. The boss itself's difficulty and tediously long segments, in turn, were also reflective of how there was a lot of tedious and long difficult segments during the game, and the fact that this game just overall had too large of a slant of difficulty. Because not only was this fight super difficult, but it was super long too. And likewise, this game was super difficult and super long. And even story-wise, the fact that this game is about Cream being a hero, everybody else being overshadowed, everybody else having to get rescued by Cream, reflects the problem that this game also really had, and I mean really had in my opinion, of Cream having way too much attention in this game compared to every other character. Not only did she have 11 endings, seriously, she had 11 endings, while Knuckles, a character, while on the other hand, Knuckles only has a measly 4, not counting the Praise Amy route endings, which just gets killed right away and doesn't contribute much to the plot. That's just criminal, I would almost say. That the difference in the number of endings that each character has is that huge. The number of important story moments she gets, the fact that her levels were clearly fleshed out more than most of the other characters' levels, most notably her continuation level was clearly fleshed out a lot more than any other character. the clear amount of extra focus she got compared to completely every other character, this fight also reflected that problem big time. And now, we finally have this. What I feel like was a very unnecessary killing of Tails doll. Not only do I feel like it's a hint of the fact there was sloppy writing during the narrative and a lack of payoffs, like again, not getting a chance to ever save Tails doll, as well as the orange hedgehog twist not being very interesting, but multiple things such as that. So yeah, like I said, I feel like the Ultimate Hexagon fight was basically a manifestation of just everything wrong with this game in a lot of ways, to be like a perfect representation of it, I guess is the best way to put it. It tried to be everything, and it ended up being almost an abomination. And now, something else to say. Like I've mentioned before, I feel like the fact that you didn't get a chance to save Tails on the best ending not only is very dissatisfying, but I also feel like it was extremely unnecessary. To elaborate, narratively, I feel like there was no good reason to kill him off, because it's like I pointed out, you had to watch Tails doll die over and over, so many other endings. The fact that you don't get to save him in the best ending and then there's not much reason for why doesn't make sense. And I know you guys already have some counter arguments that you're thinking of, and don't worry, I thought of them too. Let's talk about them. Well, obviously something needed to drive Cream to protect her friends. But how about the fact that Cheese, one of her close friends, and Vanilla, her mother, and her only living parent, were already killed narrative-wise by accident? We didn't need Cream to lose another friend for the point to be gone across at this point. And notably, to be honest, speaking of the Cheese thing, nothing is really ever done with the fact that Cheese was killed by accident. Not even in the best ending itself, in which the blue ghost literally tells Cream that he killed Cheese, when really in the other endings you could argue somebody might have taken the alternate way, in which Cream doesn't really find out what happened to Cheese. But not even in the best ending is anything done with it, which is another missed opportunity to do something with it. And in fact, we already even do see Cream being driven to protect her friends pre-Ultimate Hexagon fight, in which when she finds out her mother was killed, she decides she really needs to save her friends, or more so, she's encouraged by her mother's spirit to save her friends, is what it is. But obviously, Tails doll needed to be out of the way, so the final battle could be between just Excellent and Main 6. It said that Danahan already kind of accomplished that before the Ultimate Hexagon fight happened when Sally got separated from Tails doll. They could have stayed separated for the rest of the ending, and then Tails doll could have returned later on like something in round 3 to be revealed to have lived. Killing him really wasn't necessary, as again, it didn't do much for the plot, or Tails doll, this character, or anything of the sort. The side characters were killed off to show that this wouldn't be a Sunshine and Rainbow's ending. He died in Cream's place when Hexagon tried to take her down with him in his self-destruction. In my opinion, the whole thing with Hexagon self-destructing feels like it kind of came out of nowhere and almost felt like an asshole, to be honest. It almost felt like more so that it was included to force this sacrificial moment for Tails doll, as no implication was ever made in any of the other 20 endings that this game had that Hexagon was capable of doing this. Maybe X-Spy or Exabark had the ability to self-destruct, just like with Hexagon though. We've never been shown, mentioned, or even implied either of these two can do this before this point. I stand by the opinion that this felt like an April, forced Tails doll just to sacrifice itself just for Cream's sake. Not even any throwaway line about, like, from Exler, like about, oh, if the going gets tough with those guys, you know what to do. Like, not even anything like that. It just comes out of nowhere. It just happens. It's really silly. But, how about Exler's curse? The thing about Exler's curse is that something we usually only see if somebody in the main group is dead, not when everyone is alive. And along with this, we don't even know much about what the curse does. All we know is that it's just a curse that does things. Though you could argue it was strange because the Master Emerald, again, we still don't really get any details on what the curse even is. We're just told that it's a curse that does negative stuff and nothing else. It's just too broad to where it's like it doesn't really answer anything. And even then, Tails doll didn't even seem hostile towards Cream at all, despite the fact that it was cursed. So I don't think it would have mattered either way if he was or wasn't. Wouldn't he have a grudge against Sally since he got suffering from him? Personally, I really don't think Sally got suffering from Tails doll on purpose, and I'm pretty sure he would be somewhat understanding of this, as in the case of Cream and Tails doll on the other endings, to save herself, but not because they were in the middle of a war, where it'd be hard for Sally to even have his back. So with all that said, I still stand by what I've said before. Tails doll did not need to die for the sake of the narrative, as it didn't add anything that was already achieved or could have been achieved with prior death circumstances. And it felt pretty dissatisfying after 20 endings of having to watch the poor robot die over and over and over and over again. You don't even get a chance to save him, even in the best ending. So, with everything I have to say about the best ending, where would I rank it? Well, honestly, despite my problems I have with it, compared to every other ending in the game, I feel like it did such a good job to where I would put it in 3rd place. Like, I don't think it was quite as favorable in my opinion as either Crazy Gaming route or the Knuckles solo was, but I still think it did good enough of a job. Like, it had enough good moments in it to where, well, it was able to hold up pretty well as an ending in general for that reason. But now we have one more thing to discuss that I'm segueing into it like this because, well, I didn't really have anywhere else to fit into the video. With that being said, let's get to it. So to start off this section, I want to talk about the Ultimate Exit fight again, and review what it is that Cream pulled off. In this fight, Cream basically managed to be a hybrid of Execon, X-Bar, and X-Bi, as well as all 5 of her hypnotized friends, all by herself. No extra help from anybody, no extra handicap, such as Emerald Power, nothing. Just pure willpower and determination. Now, I don't know if I'm in the minority of people who feel like this, but my point is basically that I don't feel like this fight and the idea that it would play out how it did is believable. First off, what feats has Cream pulled off herself in Whisper Assault? Let's see. Starting with her solo endings, we literally just saw her run away from her friends in her EXEFI mutter like an absolute coward for most of the ending, and like, he basically just ran away the entire ending and didn't even like do anything else notable, and then just got to the Master Emerald only for Exeler to get there first and stop her anything. In her alternate solo, we saw her fight with Tails doll, but only in a way where she held him up. She didn't really defeat him straight up, so not much to really know there either. In her duel with Amy, again, we didn't see her accomplishment. In her duel with Sally, again, she just hid like a coward the entire ending. There was the one moment of her pulling the Uno reverse card moment on Amy, but nothing else really. So again, not really much to really know. The Cream Tails duo ending. Again, we see her run away the entire ending. The Cream Knuckles duo ending. We see her hide behind Knuckles the entire ending, and the moment Xer shows up, she tries to run away again. In the Cream Eggman duo ending, she hides behind Robotnik the entire ending. Once again, doesn't do anything for the entire ending. In the Crazy routes, I guess she beat Crazy, which I guess is something. But then suddenly, no, best ending. She just suddenly out of nowhere beats a hybrid of Execon, Exabark, XB, and X-By, and all 5 of her hypnotized friends all by herself with no extra handicap or agency through sheer willpower and determination. But then, let's talk about how strong Exler's servants have been. Execon, we've seen kill various members of the main 6 on multiple occasions. He's able to shoot lasers out of his hands, he's able to shapeshift, he's able to apparently do hypnosis, or one of the other 2 are able to, who can really say, and just a bunch of other really powerful things like that. In the case of Exabark is blind but really quick. Characters such as Amy usually have the hide from, instead of like trying to play him off. Cream had the hide from Exabark a bunch too, for one reason or another. And in general, Exabark didn't seem like one they would just take on normally, with an exception. In the case of X-By, we literally saw him take on Tails, Knuckles, and Robotnik all at the same time in round 1, and also chase after Robotnik a bunch at the beginning throughout his own segment in Freedom Assault. In other words, we've seen them do some pretty powerful things on their own. All this is to basically say that, with everything we've been shown with Exabark and Execon, we do know from the survivals of Amy, namely from her duel with Sally as well as Cream, she was forced to avoid Exabark in both these situations, thinking about the question of why she does this, despite the fact that she fights both of them in her duel on the contrary. As another note, Execon never uses lasers in battle with Cream, despite the fact that as we know from Amy's solo, Execon is more incapable of using them. Though, to be fair, this could have just been a design choice. Just because you have a spatula, it doesn't mean you always use it. And also, though it can be argued that Amy beat Execon and Exabark by herself in her solo, it brings about the question of why she avoided Exabark earlier, and how she also gets apprehended so easy by Execon later on, if she was able to beat them both in her duo survival. Though it can be argued that with this might be an X-By ability, but we've never really been shown that. In regards to X-By, again, remember, Tails, Knuckles, and Robotnik had to work together to defeat just X-By in round 1, but you expect me to believe that Cream was able to beat him and the other 2 combined all by herself. And it's not even just the servants of Excellent that are way too strong for what we've seen Cream achieve, or to realistically beat them by herself. Her friends have a decent number of things too. For example, Tails. He beat Tailsdoll, and as we know, Tailsdoll seems to be powerful to where he even scared off Execon and Cream's initial level, which implies he has great strength, but Tails defeats him in the duel regardless. Cream in his fight doesn't even do anything to fight Tailsdoll at all. That not enough for you? How about the fact that not only does Tails also defeat Knuckles in his duel with Sally, remember, we know from the Nightmare series, and I assume Spirits of Hell is following a somewhat similar canon in the Nightmare series, though we do know that some things are different here and there. Demonized Mobians are far stronger than their undemonized counterparts, but more importantly, he beats Demonized Cream and surviving at Mountain Peak alone when Cream is dead. Amy's no different. Even though we haven't seen too much of Amy, from what we know with Amy, when we're going crazy, she killed Tails and Knuckles without any problem. Though it could be argued whose guards were down in this case while she was able to. Though the thing with Knuckles is, he took out Knuckles off screen, so we don't really know anything in that regard, but Tails, I guess you could argue his guard was down. But I guess another thing too, to be fair, is that in the case of Amy's fight with Metal Sonic, it was just an illusion, so it doesn't really show anything other than Amy's inner strength, which, if anything, can almost even be brought about as a question of, like, Why didn't Amy break out of the inner demon awakening at any point? What did she have that she was hiding within her that was still messing her up? The other characters, while we all have things that you could explain it with, like Tails has the fact that he was bullied and rejected by people. Sally has the fact that she has no friends other than Sonic. Robotnik has so many things that you could bring up. Knuckles has stuff that's just not coming to mind, but he definitely has things. So it's like, to be fair, with all the others, there's definitely things there, but in the case of Amy, is there really anything left? Because it's like, Vanilla even says this. She was able to overcome her own past, so it's like, why is she still, like, in this situation here? Because we needed Cream to do everything, obviously. In the case of Sally, and in terms of what we've seen her do, we've seen her defeat Robotnik Demonize Form, which, to be fair, Robotnik isn't that strong without machines, not a huge accomplishment. And also defeat Execon in her own survival, but nothing else notable, so admittedly not much to work with. In the case of Knuckles, we saw him beat a clone of Excellent, which clones of X are still decently strong, even though not as strong as X are himself, and fight off X-Spy, but needing Tails and Knuckles' help in round 2, beat Amy in her demonized form, and again, he also beat Cream too! And I mean, yeah, I'm ranting about all this power scaling inconsistency, and Dan admittedly did actually give me an answer to all of this. Not me, but more so just people in general. Basically, at some point when somebody had a similar question to this, more so regarding Cream beating Ultimate X-Con, Dan gave an answer of, it wasn't Cream's first try. Which brings me to another question. Are Exler's servants aware of the timeline? In which, as it turns out, there actually isn't really any evidence for if they do or don't, that is never really implied in. And admittedly, if Cream was retaining fragments of memory and the servants weren't, the explanation that Cream eventually won holds a lot more water. What it, however, doesn't explain is a whole new slew of issues it now opens up. As we know from all of the different endings throughout the games, as the characters say over and over and over and over and over and over again, both the main six and Exler and Alice all retain memories from past timelines. And you might wonder what the problem with this is. Remember, regarding the Ultimate X-Con fight, it's not really clear if any of the main characters have any sort of control over their own actions, namely, are they brainwashed or are they hypnotized? In the case of the former, I would say it's more likely that Execon doesn't say he's controlling their minds, but he says he awakened their inner demons, which in of itself is very vague as to what this means. What do their inner demons do? It's never explained at all. And the problems this creates too are with the Mountain Peak fights. Given the whole thing of characters retaining memories from the past timelines, and how we know demonized versions of Mobius are pretty much always stronger than their normal counterparts, and they're clearly trying to kill their living counterparts, this brings about a question. How do Tails, Knuckles, and Robotnik manage to win these fights? This would entail they're fighting on somewhat equal footing with them, given that they retain memories too, and how, then, would they win against them? And this also opens up a bunch of other holes. When you factor in things like this, how did Tails beat Tails though? When Cream wasn't able to do that, yet she can beat Tails all by herself, even when she runs away in the duo survival, as we see her do in her alternate solo. One can argue that's because Tails told her to, which I guess is fair enough, but if Cream is as strong as Tails is, as this would imply, how about things like the Chris Amy route, where we also see Cream beat Amy, yet Tails and Knuckles couldn't, while also avoiding the two assaults? In the case of Cream, she didn't actually beat Tails on top of that, but she just caused him to shut down, which can actually be used to argue that Cream is actually weaker than Tails, which if that's so, and both her and Tails are achieving memories in the best ending, how does she beat Tails? Also, how about the fact that Execon, in the case of the initial level, led Tails Ball, which showed up in Cream's initial level, and then the question of, like, why did he do that? If it's wrong to say it's because he had the Chaos Emerald, if so, how did Execon know that Tails will have the Chaos Emerald, and then why didn't he try to take it? Ah, my head hurts! Now, in terms of what I personally feel like is the answer to all this? The way I see it, explanation to where all these inconsistencies come from is that the story of this game is full of BS and the characters are as strong as the story needs them to be. Which, while I don't want this to be the answer, with how inconsistent the power scaling is with things like Amy being both Hexagon and Exobark one moment and hiding in fear of them another, Hexagon apparently fearing Tailsdoll, which a counter-argument also doesn't hold well to, Tails being Tailsdoll, and Creamy.exe, then being beaten by Cream in the best ending, which remember what I said earlier about how we don't really know what conditions the characters are in those endings. It seems to be what the explanation is. One moment, these guys can be literally kicking ass and be the strongest guys in the entire story, and one moment, they're the ones who are getting their A's kicked and need to be saved by a little rabbit. In general, it's like I said, it's inconsistent, it's all over the place. I feel like the real explanation is that there isn't any real power scaling, and really the characters are just as strong and powerful as the plot needs them to be. It's unfortunate, but it's what I see from what the plot shows us. So, with everything that I've said on this game, what are my final thoughts? In this video, we talked about the story, we talked about the gameplay and the design, we talked about the music, we talked about the difficulty scaling, we talked about the endings themselves, as well as some other things. And to be honest, because of the fact I felt differently about each of them, the way we're going to do things is, we're going to give each section of the game its own score, and then we're going to rate how we felt about the game overall. Starting with the story, it kept things very engaging, interesting, and mysterious, and it felt like as you were going through the game, with not just the different stuff going on in the present, but also all the memory fragments that added onto the background of the story as well, that you were acquiring another piece of the bigger puzzle. However, it has some writing decisions that dragged it down a bit, such as the orange hedgehog thing and the way Tailsdoll was handled, like I mentioned before. Overall, nice job with a few problems, 7.5 out of 10. In the case of the gameplay and the design, it's such a mixed bag, to where, while it isn't the worst execution in the world, I would be lying if I didn't say it's not even close to the best in different areas. I give the gameplay and design a 5 out of 10. The music? Pretty much every musical choice made sense, and are ones I wouldn't switch out for any other song and fit what's currently happening. My only real gripe is that there could have been just a little bit more variety in the songs, and maybe change the ultimate exit song. Just a maybe on that. Overall, I give the music a 9 out of 10. The difficulty scaling, or more so, the non-existence of it. It felt like that in many cases, despite this game's difficulty being lower than round 1's, at least this was what Dan Hall's intention was. It was still very unforgiving regardless, and it spread itself so thin on the gameplay styles to where the player never really got a chance to adapt to any of them, while simultaneously throwing really hard challenges at them for these new styles, such as the Hexagon fights in the Amy and Sally solos, and many parts of the game felt like they were made difficult just for the sake of being difficult. Such as you! It however did a good job on introducing gimmicks in a safe environment. That's honestly a given for game design. Overall, I give it a 3 out of 10. So in terms of what I overall give the game in its rating, here's what I feel like. The game kept its story reasonably engaging and had a bunch of killer tracks, no pun intended, to listen to as you play. However, in its more important aspects, its gameplay and difficulty scaling, there's so many places to where it does a poor job, to where it leaves a pretty mixed, average experience overall. So overall, this game's overall rating, I have to give the game a 5.5 out of 10. A bit above average, but it left so much to be desired to where I honestly just can't give it that much credit. Quality over quantity after all. It's funny how your initial impression of entertaining me can go on. Going into this game, I really wanted to give it a 10 out of 10. So wow, what it is now after seeing the entire experience for what it is. So now, with this video up, with how I've constantly been saying, over an entire year later now, I am now finally putting Whisper of Soul to rest. I've done a 25 session long Let's Play on it. I've done a bonus video. And now, as I'm predicting, an almost hour-long review on the entire game. Not an hour-long review. So, it's been a fun series. All of it's been fun. All 25 parts have been nice. The bonus video was nice. And it was neat writing this review video. But I think it's about time that we moved on after all of this. I'm glad that you are here for our series. But it is now time to put it to rest. So that is what will be happening with this video's release. Now, with that being said, MosaicArts is leaving the building. Be sure to check out what's currently going on over on my Game Jolt. I'm working on the shape-shifting horror, which seeks to be a non-exe, non-creepypasta Sonic horror game. It is simply what I have stated to be, a Sonic horror game with a demo out now that you can go play and check out if you are interested. Be sure you also check out my other socials, such as my Discord server for the shapeshifting horror in itself, my Game Jolt, and stuff like that. And be sure to like, comment, subscribe for more, and to share this video with a friend and hit that notification bell so that you stay notified on when I upload new videos to this channel. And until next time, spectators, I will see you the next show and our next adventure. From what we know with Amy, when we're going crazy, she killed Tails and Amy. Knuckles, excuse me. Yeah, he's a pathetic weakling. Pathetic weakling. He's a. It kept things engaging and interesting. It kept things engaging and interesting. I keep messing that up. It kept things engaging and How do I keep messing that up? It kept things engaging and interesting